All right, we'll give YouTube a couple of seconds to catch up, but thank you everybody for joining in the Free Time Mastermind podcast. My name is Robert Gaines. I often forget to mention that. I've got Cameron Magee with me, which saying that he runs a event production company, I feel like is underselling it because as I was doing a lot of research for the episode, I realized, my gosh, this is really a nationwide full service company, which is a VOD 3. And if you can give us an idea, Cameron, how many events are you guys doing a year? Because I thought, what's the best question to give the scale of how big your operation is?
The simple answer is last year we did 153, believe it or not.
And what's amazing about that for people that are not in the event production space, this is post COVID, so those numbers are massive, and plus you guys are nationwide. One thing that I wanted to ask, I always like to try to get a quick win for our live audience. Live event production, particularly since our audience are business people, entrepreneurs, business owners, events are really critical, especially if somebody's a small business owner. It might be a real stretch for them to put on an event. What do you think if you were just doing a consulting job with somebody doing their first event? What do you suggest for them to really focus on so that they can make sure that their first event is a success financially?
Yeah, I love that. I would focus on the attendee experience and making sure the time is really potent for them. I was talking with one of our clients the other day, and they had turned down so many sponsorships and said no to so many very important people that had big dollars. And I said, "What are you doing that for? Nobody does that. Everybody gives the sponsors whatever they want." And they said, well, I don't think any of that was going to be valuable for the attendees. And I had so much respect for that ruthless pursuit of we can always find more sponsors, but if we break the trust of the attendees who have given us their attention span, what are we doing? So I would just say if you're going to gather people together, don't waste their time and don't put all your very important people in a room to embarrass yourself.
That's great, Cameron. It's funny because you brought up a great point. I was on a business call early this morning, and an entrepreneur friend of mine is having some trouble with a situation. And I said, the fundamental problem here is that your values aren't aligning with the person that you're working with. And what you just said, I don't know who the person you were doing business with, but they've got very high values. And it's very easy to work with people where there's a value alignment, especially if you're ethical and moral standards. So I'm sure you have some filtering process too, because you also don't want every client. Do you have a process where you vet people? Is there like a pre-interview, a filtration through your basically your sales funnel?
Yeah, for sure. Our events, we do a pretty wide spectrum, honestly. I've probably gotten more flack for not filtering than filtering. I'll give an explanation. Once you do events, you have to realize you may be doing an event one day for one political party and another event the next day for another
Oh,
political party.
that's
You may be doing an event one day for a large retailer and then the next day for a large online person. And it's tough to just be very objective and say, listen, we're here to run the sound and run the video and run the lights and do a great job. And just because we're doing this event today doesn't mean that we're perfectly aligned and affiliated with this person and vice versa.
that's a great
We've
point.
political things are the most divisive, and I give the same speech every time to the crew. Look, 50% of you probably would vote for this person and 50% of you wouldn't. And so those who are really happy, if you could stay calm today and not get too rowdy, those who are upset, if you could stay calm and not get too rowdy, and next week we'll trade places, because when we do these, we've got to serve the White House as the biggest honor. And that's not really a political campaign at that point. That's an elected official. And we've done multiple administrations. And so we've served red and blue. But the speech I get from the White House is this person who's been on staff there for 20 years is they all get the same service from me. And I just have a lot of respect for that. So I may be not the best one to ask for filtering of events. Essentially, if we're available and if it's a good fit, there's a lot of scope and fit. And do they really care about their event? Do they want their event to be great and grow and be successful? If it's just a checking the box, then we're probably not the best fit. There's always someone who can do it cheaper. But yeah, that's the hardest part about events, honestly, Robert, is the divisive nature of the content on stage when everything has gotten so divisive.
And it's great that you brought that up because I saw in your, and of course, we're both alumni to Pod Matches, which is great. You speaking of ethics, and I've said this, on public forums before, so I'll say it here too, that in my first experience with Alex Sanfilippo and his wife Alicia, I could just tell by the messaging that this was an extremely ethical guy. That's why I cheerlead Podmatch, because they're, such a great organization, and it's easy to support somebody again who you have shared values. But I noticed on your site that you had served the White House, and I saw that and I thought, I'm apolitical, so I think it's a win for you guys. I'm like, that's a great gig. And but I thought, yeah, the audience is going to say, which admin, they're just going to be geared on which side was it. And of course, I don't belong in that camp. I think that, whoever you work for, you just have to deliver a good service. And let's face it, power shifts hands every couple of years. So, I really don't see a big difference between the two, but this is not a political show. But anyway, I also too, you have grown so big over the years. I've watched, one of the biggest things that helps me do these interviews is I watch prior interviews, because one thing, Cameron, and I don't want to ask you the same old questions over and over again, because you've done a lot of media. When I typed your name into YouTube, I mean, it's great. You go on a lot of interview shows. So let me ask that from a marketing perspective. How does being a podcast guest fit into your overall marketing? Because obviously you do it with a lot of gusto and you dedicate a lot of time. And of course, podcasters like myself really appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I want to make it a great episode for you, honestly. I mean, I have a lot of respect for you as the host, being able to stick your neck out and say, I'm going to go do this thing. You've got to have great guests to keep it engaging and interesting. So I'm thankful and honored to be here, frankly. I do this almost as a personal and professional development thing for me. If you can imagine being an AV nerd, I started when I was really young, and I've just spent my whole life behind the scenes. I've always been behind the console, and I realized, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, when I would be telling my story to people and we'd be talking, they would say, I've been so inspired by spending time with you. If I had a young person come sit at my desk and say, hey, my parents said I need to talk to you because they heard you started your career really young, or I want to learn about how, do you think I need to go to college? Does this degree? And I would speak with people and they would say, this is really inspiring. And thank you for spending time with me. And I was just kind of, okay, great. And I would just go back to work and everything. And then the more I talked to people, I said, I'd love to help more people just be inspired by my story. To me, I don't think my story is really that unique or interesting. It's just the American dream of I got a craft and now I run a small business. But in 2026, that is more and more rare. So many businesses are big corporations, they're acquired and merged, and it's complicated. And so the fact that my wife and I just run this small business in Arkansas and do with the thing that I love, to me, it's just like a chef starting a business. But I come on these shows and just use my voice to be an encouragement and an inspiration. When I talk to mentors, when I talk to friends, they inspire me. And so this is the best way I know to kind of 10x and 100x and amplify that instead of just meeting one-on-one. But I'm just here to help other people think differently. And maybe your parents are saying this exact same thing to you as a young person, but maybe hearing it from me, you might hear it differently. Maybe to a small business owner who's discouraged, maybe I could be an encouragement. That's really why I'm here, honestly. But thank you.
Well, there's a big part of your mission that's very education oriented. And I do want to talk about that later, because you've had clients in the past that, because when people go to event production, they're in various stages of, they're about to have the event. And sometimes they might already have a production company and then they just lost them. Or so you're getting people at all different levels of preparation. And I want to get more into the specific services that you offer, because you do have this strong educational component where you can help people realize some things that they didn't realize about event production, because you've been doing it so long, and your business is very wide as far as all the different things that you can offer. And I do want to get into that, but let's go back to the origin. I do know that you've been involved with AV from a very young age, but it sounds like in college two big things happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's when the genesis of this particular company started, and you also met your wife. So
That's right.
two huge things came together at the same time. So did I get that part right?
That's right. And that's such an important part of my story. And the reason I resonate with your show, I prepared to be on your show too, just like you were prepared for today. I wanted to listen and understand what was
I
relevant.
get it.
And the one thing I wanted to say here in the first half of the episode was I'm a big believer of growth and I love personal growth. And one of our core values here at our company is all about growth being the goal. And I believe the key to company growth is individual growth. I'm always cheering people on for their personal and professional development. Even doing this episode is, as I said, growth and development for me. This is a skill I'm trying to get better at. But I don't believe in growth at all costs. And I think the timing of that is not an accident that I got introduced to my wife and introduced to this business both in 2011 in my dorm room, because she is my inspiration to not just work all the time. I want to be a good husband to Laura. I want to be a good father to Jack and Luke, our two little boys. And to me, that year, as we said, when I was back in 2002, when I was 12, that was an inspirational year to say, hey, this is this craft that God's given me this ability. I want to do AV. But 2011, to have that awakening there in the dorm room of this is the business, but this is the woman, has been very important to me. And Laura and I had a date night a couple nights ago where we just got to briefly connect and kind of talk more deeply at the dinner table, and instead of just talking about kid stuff. And I was talking to her, and we were joking about how we're different now than we probably would have been if we weren't so committed to one another in our marriage and things. And I told her, I think I'd be a pretty sad individual. I think I'd have a bigger business. I think the business may look more successful, and I'm so glad that it doesn't, because I love having more of a healthy, balanced life. And I needed her to hear that, so yeah, that's a little too deep, but back to the show. But yeah, meeting Laura and the business, both very important things for me 15, 16 years ago.
If I didn't know any better, I'd say you saw my questions ahead of time, because you're going right off on the
Oh,
script. You're
good.
not off the script. You're actually on the script, Cameron,
Let's go. That's
because
great.
I'm guilty of not. I'm single. Been single for a exceedingly long time. Left home when I was 19. Been on the road ever since. So I've been, and now I'm in Managua, Nicaragua. So I'm in Central America right now. So and this may be the final big transition of this adventure, but I have forgotten to ask people in the 2 years I've been doing this podcast, work-life balance. I haven't asked people about their families, and that's such a critical, important part. And so now I'm making a more concerted effort to bring that in, because I do have work-life balance too, even though I don't have children. And like you just said, I could fill that space. Like if you were single, you would have filled that space with businesses or hobbies, or unfortunately, some people get hung up in other things that are not very positive. They go, there's many ways to go down the casino, and I've seen people go down all of those paths. And thankfully, despite all of the moving around, I've stayed core with what's important, because again, what we're talking about is what is your core value. So family being at the center of your core value, it's really easy for you to make decisions whether to grow, whether to expand, whether to open 3 more locations, because you have to run that through the filter of, how's this going to affect the wife and kids, which I think is fantastic. So when you make that decision, well, let me ask this: because it's a family business, would it be proper to characterize it as that, as a family business?
I don't know. It's certainly a couple's business. I don't know. The boys are only 6 and 7. Maybe someday it'll be a family business. I guess you could call it a family business. I feel like
Yeah.
we're the family business in the first 10 years of the first generation. It's not like a 75-year-old 3-generation family business yet. But yeah, I run it with my wife. So I think that's a family business. I've never thought of it that way.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I went on Avod 3 on the website, I was shocked at how many staff you have, because a lot of I deal with a lot of expats, digital nomads, people in the service space, and there's this obsession, unfortunately, with using as few people as possible. And I loved going to your site, seeing those bright faces, and they look like they're happy to be working there. And I thought, wow, this is exciting, because again, you're in a space that's very inspiring, because we're all still trying to recover from the world we lived in during COVID. And I always say there's something fundamental to human beings to sit down at the table and to break bread. It's something in our DNA, and I think we're getting back to it. And your company is part of that, of bringing people together. And then internally, as a boss, as an owner, you're doing that as well. So when you're hiring all of those wonderful people, that big staff that you have, how are you determining what are your tricks for the entrepreneurs watching to attract good talent and retain good talent? Do you have any special techniques that you use that help you through?
I love that question. Yeah, I've got a couple things, more long-term principles and then more short-term stuff we just did last month that I'd love to just share hot off the press. I'm big on having as big a team as I can, and that's the opposite, as you said, of a digital nomad, and it's gotten me in trouble, frankly, Robert. I've been on a couple of shows where I've talked more about times that I've gotten that wrong when we've overhired, and
Wow.
the problem is I care so much about people. And I want to have job creation. I want to have economic development. I want to build a place that we all want to work. I'm trying to build a great work environment. I'm in our conference room, but right out there, those happy people that you said, I mean, we're working hard. We're probably not just sitting at our desk smiling, but they're happy to be here. I want to build a place that they want to work. And where that's gotten me in trouble is when I've gotten too excited and seen too much opportunity on the horizon and my eyes have gotten big and we've overhired. And then usually, in business, there's only one way to course correct that overhiring. You can wait for people to leave or you can do layoffs. And I've gotten that I've gotten that wrong with layoffs. And that's the biggest lose-lose heartbreaking situation over the years of moments where I've had to scale the team back. So I have a lot more discipline nowadays about, when we're committing to hire someone. A couple of just short-term tips and tricks. We had a job opening recently. Our most recent hire, she's been here 3 weeks. She's been doing great. We we needed, it's kind of a nuanced, quirky role. It's like our operations coordinator, and she's keeping all the trains running on time and all of our logistics, as you can imagine. We've got trucks all over the country. We've got flights and hotels and freelancers and vendors and all this coordination. And but we knew if we posted the title of operations coordinator, we'd get 3 applicants. That's just such an obscure title, and who's qualified for that. And so at the 11th hour, we had written it all as operations coordinator. And at the 11th hour, we said, let's actually title this office manager. It's kind of the same thing. She's running the office for us, and it's a small business office manager. And I bet we had 100 applicants instead of three.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
But
because
we
that's an
we
easily understandable type. Go ahead.
yes. And so the SEO of like the not clickbait, but just people grasping like office manager, let me read this one. The job description was still the exact same as it is. And we were open with them in the interview process about, hey, this is the job and everything. But just kind of latching onto a title that people would resonate with. I remember when our current chief of staff, when we hired her as my executive assistant. Same deal. We had 130 or 140 applicants for executive assistant. Now, nowadays, she's our chief of staff. She's doing a lot more in the business than just my executive assistant. But we knew that was the attributes of a person. And so that's how we started her. She got to know me inside and out. And now she can embody me and our culture and our core values to the whole company from how much time we spent together, just her being my assistant. And so, as a silly tip and trick, I would be very pure on the job description, but I would be very loose on the title, oddly, at first, just to make sure you got a wide funnel. And then, second answer to that question, longer term, we're a big believer in, I say that we hire for character over competency. And we're looking for a person that we think has the character that we want. And we turned down a lot of applicants for this job that we just filled that would have been perfect on paper for the kind of the skills. They had the experience doing it, but we didn't see the attributes like we see in this teammate. And we just finished her 3rd week. I just took her for a 1 hour walk, and we were going over some company history and vision and core value things. And I affirmed her at the end of that to say, we saw this in you. We saw your character over your competency. And in a month or two, you'll be in a team interview looking for our next candidate. And I want you to be looking through this lens of character over competency. I think that's what I would share.
Thank you, Cameron. And of course, I think of a team when it's working well, like a still body of water. And when you bring that new hire in, if you said character, I say values, they're closely related. If there's an alignment, it's going to be like a pebble hitting the pond. There's going to be a little bit of wake, but it's going to settle in, and they're going to sink right into the culture of the company. And sometimes you do want somebody to come in and be a rock and shake things up and create waves, and because organizations get stagnant. But one thing that I like about what you do that I want to point out that's obvious from your chief of staff is that you're also promoting internally. So these people know that there's growth opportunities inside of the company. And that's critical because I've worked for a lot of companies that were owned, let's say by a husband and wife or a family. and the concern for those people are, if I'm not Cameron's son, I'm not going to be the CEO, or I'm not going to, but you're not afraid to put people in high. You could have went and got your cousin, let's be honest, because you're running your business in that area, but you chose not to do that and go with talent. And I think that speaks volumes to the quality of your business. But what I wanted to pivot to is you've been doing this so long and again, I want to probably stick to people coming to you for business events in particular. What is the most common thing that you're suggesting to them as far as potential changes? So they come with their idea of what they want to try to do, and it meets with your vision. And of course, you know what's successful, what works, and what doesn't. Where are you most often getting the wrench out and adjusting their idea of what they're trying to do?
People come to us for audio visual. They come to us thinking we're going to make a recommendation on the microphones or the screens or something. And we certainly do. And we've got a team full of nerds like me who want to talk to them about the LED wall and things like that. But I think probably the biggest thing that surprises people, I love to go on the site visit when they're looking at the property. So that's one of the few things that I still directly do with the business is if I hear the word site visit, I want to go. And I will arm wrestle the team on like two of us should go, like the project leader, but I want to be the second person on that site visit because I love kind of shaking up how they look at the property a little bit. It's so easy to say, oh, we'll do the general session over here, we'll do the breakouts over here. So I love to shake that up. And I don't think people expect that from the AV nerd. I think they're ready for me to talk about the recordings or the streaming or something. And I love just to challenge it. And I'm one of a dozen people on these site visits. So I'm just the AV guy at the back of the site visit, but I love to say, we could actually spin the room this way. Because then and I love sharing that. And when people try it, it shakes things up. A lot of our conferences that we do are annual events and people get in a rut, like you said, the pond, sometimes you want to throw a rock in there. And then the second thing I think that I advise people that may surprise them is I love to kind of challenge the agenda a little bit. I think so often people say, oh, we're going to start the week with an opening general session. We're going to close the week with a closing general session. We're going to do all these breakouts every afternoon. And with rising costs and budgets always being a constraint for everybody, especially this season we're currently in, I love to just challenge that and say, if we're going to set up the biggest stage and do it Monday, and then we have to wait on that stage until Friday, it's kind of sitting for 3 days. And do you really need that? And I love to just question, maybe Monday is just a networking reception, and then let's have the big stage Tuesday, because that's going to save you one whole day of that gear. And I just love kind of challenging that. But I think people get stuck in like, well, this is the way the agenda always is. The COO always welcomes everyone. We have to call it to order and all this silly bureaucracy. And I love to just kind of shake that up and say, no, you don't. It's your event. You don't have to do any of that. If you want to, great, but make sure you choose to actively. Don't just, kind of get lulled into doing it. So probably just the building layout and the agenda are the things that I love to just challenge people on. And then they make their own decision. It's their party.
That's fantastic. Like I said, you're probably breaking their expectations. One, if you're suggesting they spend less money, first of all, that's a shocker and immediately gives you a lot of credibility, like right off the bat. People love that, especially now that we are, everybody is looking for a bargain right now. That's why I'm sitting here in Nicaragua, why I'm not in Miami, or I was living about an hour south of Orlando, and I'm living for a same lifestyle, but actually better in a lot of ways for a fraction of what I was paying.
That's cool.
So I'm responding to the economic changes, and I'm looking for a deal, and I've got a bargain. So with that said, I think too people have that expectation that you're going to be talking about the technical, but to have somebody with your level of experience deal with the flow of the event, that's incredible. And you made a post that I wanted to comment on because I'd never thought about that for you in event production. You said there's this excitement when people bust open the doors and that first flow of people go into the event and they're, whoa, the LED screens, and they're having this just instant response. And that you were part of that, because something that's really tough in 2026 is we're not building things anymore. My father used to build fire towers. So when I was a little kid in the 1980s, we'd be going down the highway and he said, son, I was on that job and there was this tower sticking up out of the park. And there was this pride of, I built that. My hands were on that. And you get that because when you walk in and you see people mystified by this construction of the stage, you get a great deal of pleasure. Whereas I was thinking in the performance, when somebody's on stage and they're getting the applause, and you get a taste of that too because you're a performing drummer on top of business owner, husband, and father. I don't know how you find the time, but I thought that was fantastic. So here, this is the closest thing I have for you for an ambush question. Who's your favorite drummer? Let's just get that out in the open.
Oh, I love that question. It's a deep cut, kind of an obscure thing. There is a pop group called Laney, and it's just a two-person duo, and it's a lead singer and a drummer. And that drummer, his name is Jake Goss, and I know him personally, and I'm a big fan of his. But you talk about pulling some weight when it's a two-person duo, and it's the
I just
singer.
wrote that down, by the way. That's why I'm over here.
Yeah,
That's why you're hearing noise. I grabbed my
yeah,
pen because I'm
Laney.
always looking for,
Yeah, Laney and
you know.
Jake Goss, he's awesome. But yeah, the applause is great. I love that Lady Gaga song, Live for the Applause. But for me, Doors is just when you blow those doors, like to let them see it. And I'm with you. We don't get to do that anymore. But I love seeing it in the attendees' eyes because I think event production is a lot like building construction. We built something. Now in 5 days, we're going to tear it all down. And it's kind of crazy to go back to an empty ballroom, but I love seeing that. I love the crew getting to see that. And I think I advise people the way that I do on the agenda and the building and stuff because I could talk to them about LED specifications all day, but they don't care. They just kind of gloss over. Like I'll talk to my nerd friends about that. I think I share those things because most clients, most event people, they only do 2 or 3 events a year. And we did 153 last year. I mean, we've done over 1,000 events. And so in a weird way, some of the advice or, guiding we give when they choose to listen to us, they don't have to listen to us. The wise ones do because they're like, well, gosh, you guys did 3 events last week. Should we do this or do that? We love when people almost kind of not, it's not a respect thing, but just kind of realize they have an untapped resource and just asking us. And I think the wise clients pick up on that. So we advise on the nerdery, but I just love advising because we see so many events. It's such a fun laboratory.
Like the people that you want watching this video, your ideal demographic would be somebody that already is putting on a lot of events and they have connections with a lot of people because that's going to be better for you in the long run. Somebody that can bring you 10, 15 events a year. Would that be fair to say? And if so, do you have a favorite type of event planner that you can really move the needle for with their type of events?
Yeah, events are everywhere. And so even if someone listening isn't the event planner, I would say if you can just imagine 1,000-person conference, these 1,000-person conferences, they're usually multi-day. They usually move cities every year because they're attracting people who fly in from all over the country and they want to be fair, as you said, to the Orlando folks and the Sacramento folks. So probably got 8 to 10 breakouts. They probably have a big keynote speaker that they really want to do well, or if it's a corporation, they really want the CEO's speech to go well. But that's the event that we do over and over. We do it for dentists, we do it for lawyers, we do it for, you wouldn't believe some of the groups we do these conferences for. It's hilarious sometimes, these groups, but that's the conference that I'm looking for. And yeah, a byproduct of getting to do these shows is just awareness of people the next time they're at a conference and the sound is bad or the slides freeze or something, or maybe their sister works in marketing at a company. It's like, hey, you should meet this guy. Like, I love just doing quick calls with people to help look at what they've been spending or help advise them. As you said, I don't mind helping people save money because I hate waste. And so often there's so much opportunity for waste on these events with overtime or union costs or freight or logistics. And I just love helping people not necessarily save money, lower their budget, but just make their dollar go further. And so, yeah, that's who I'm looking for is someone who's hosting that large annual conference or knows someone who is that I could just give them a second set of eyes. That's what I'm here to do.
I appreciate that, Cameron. One thing I noticed about guys like you in production or that are constantly around big names, like you were saying, keynote speakers. You've been around some pretty famous people. Have you ever been starstruck? And if so, who was it? Because I know it's a little harder to for you to be starstruck because you're around big events and big people doing things all the time. But was there somebody where you kind of planned in your head what you were going to say and an opportunity to meet them and you you stuttered a little bit?
I think when I'm the most starstruck is when these people give me and really the crew who's standing to my left and right
Mhm.
actual respect and attention. And so we've gotten that from the CEO of some of the largest companies in the world. We've gotten that from the President of the United States. We've gotten that from, TV celebrities like Jay Leno or music celebrities, I won't name all the names. Chris Stapleton was really nice to us. Like there's different folks. But I think when I'm the most starstruck is when actually somebody comes back to the booth. They didn't have to come back, and
Oh,
they'll come
yeah.
and find us and say like, "Hey, you guys nailed that. Sounded great. Thanks a lot." And I think that's when I truly don't know what to say other than just thank you, because I'm not expecting that. And there's other times where we have nailed something and we didn't get the thank you because they're just busy. And
Yeah,
you don't
that's
take
true.
that personally.
That's right.
They're halfway to the airport and they have to be, and that's why you are starstruck because they're
Sure.
they're important and they're busy and things. And so I think I'm the most surprised when the chairman of the board and his spouse come back and say, "Hey, this was really nice tonight. And you guys made that happen. And thank you so much." That's usually when we're like, "Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am." We just don't know what to do. And I think that's really a lesson in my book that even though I'm a small fish, I'm nobody. When I'm passing at the convention center, the guy who's taking out the trash, the guy who's wiping down the counter in the bathroom, if I can just kind of catch him and say, "Hey, thanks for doing that. Appreciate it." Surely that feels to him the way that it feels to me when a celebrity thanks the
That's
AV
right.
crew. And so really, I think that's the lesson behind that question is who is it? No matter who you are, you can turn over your shoulder and thank someone who's serving you because we're all serving someone. And really, we're all in the service business. Even leaders, we're in servant business. And so I think the lesson there is make somebody else starstruck, make them surprised that you noticed them and said, "Hey, thank you," because that gets more and more foreign every year. And I think it makes an impact on lives personally. Good
And in the
question.
service that you're offering, Cameron, when it's done right, it's invisible. So I was at Jazz Fest, a very short war story. I was at Jazz Fest a very long time ago, and something went wrong with the sound equipment. And the lead singer of a formerly famous band didn't handle it well. And he identified all of the people that were, at fault for this. And it was a bit, even the crowd, it really took the energy out of the crowd because he was frustrated. He said some things and I was like, whoa, and the production team definitely didn't want to be recognized in that way. So when the event production is flawless, it's invisible. So like you said, for somebody to take that extra time to come in on something that people don't really notice what's happening on in the back, like with Jay Leno's show, he's on screen, but there's this giant team. There's a team in the green room. There's a team upstairs. There's a team of writers. There's camera people, light people. There's probably people up in the rafters doing stuff. And you never see that because when it's done right, it's invisible. So how do you want people to connect with you? Do you want them to go to Avad, which is AVAD3.com, or find you on LinkedIn? Excuse me.
That's great. I appreciate you asking that. I would just connect with me on LinkedIn. As I said, I do these shows to help make great episodes for y'all and great content and inspire people. If somebody's listening to this and they like that, if they would just connect with me on LinkedIn, I think that'd be special to me. You don't have to send me a message and say great episode, but just to be connected on LinkedIn, I think would mean a lot because I love meeting people. And this, we're live right now and you're recording it, you're going to slice it up and things, but I don't get to see the audience. I don't get to see who's listening in live events. I get to see people. And so if someone's listening and they wanted to connect with me, it would mean a lot to me. Just hit that button on LinkedIn so that I can read their profile and get to know them. So that's what I would say.
Fantastic. Well, Cameron, in the description, I've already got the your main website. I'll add your LinkedIn as well as soon as this is over. And was there anything you wanted to get to that I didn't ask? Because 30 minutes goes by so fast. And like I said, we got through about a third of my a third of my questions. But
Well, I think you're a great host and I love the show and I enjoyed listening to previous episodes. I think what I would leave folks as a closing thing is no matter what you're doing, make sure you're serving people. And that's important to me and my faith and who I am as a person to be serving people. And then I think secondly, no matter what you're pursuing, don't pursue growth at all costs. And there's been seasons where I've gone all in, and sometimes you have to sprint to be able to rest. I'm certainly not suggesting that I'm just resting all the time, but I'm also not working all the time. And I think that the body and the design of all of us and the way the world works, you need both. So make sure you're serving others and keep a balance, which we all know we need to do. it's hard to do it. And so don't neglect getting the skill and the boundaries and the habits that lead to that, because it's worth it. Take it from me, a guy who's running 153 events all over the country. And I've learned to trust crews without me being there, so that my mental and the trust of them and everything is just healthier. That's what I would advise. But thanks for asking. Yeah.
No problem. Thank you so much, Cameron. I appreciate it. If you don't mind, I'll end the stream. We'll just do a quick wrap up on Zoom.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Give me just a second. It takes a couple of more clicks here to close the live stream. Thank you, everybody. All right, I think we're good. Thank you so much. Believe it or not, even early in the morning, we had 4 continuous views.